Today's story is about a man who escapes from jail every time, no matter how much security is in place. This is the story of Suzuki, Japan's most notorious prisoner, currently serving his sentence in Japan's highest security prison. After the guard on duty finished his rounds, Suzuki suddenly smiled and took out one of his teeth. Moments later, when the guards came back for another check, Suzuki was already gone. They suspected someone might be present, but Suzuki was no amateur. He silently moved around, avoiding light and hiding. When the guard checked the isolation cell again, they realized Suzuki had escaped. As Suzuki was escaping from the roof, the prison alarms blared loudly, and it started raining heavily. The story flashes back to 12 years earlier when some prisoners, including Suzuki, were brought to the prison. He was there to serve a 10-year sentence, and because he never spoke, everyone assumed he was mute. He had an upside-down Mount Fuji tattoo on his chest. Even then, Suzuki was famous for escaping from prison and had done so 3 times already. He was placed in a small room with only one skylight, which he examined carefully, clearly thinking of a plan. Outside, the guard told Warden Mr. Kanamura that Suzuki wouldn't escape this time. However, when he looked through the glass, Suzuki was already gone. The warden ordered the entire city to be surrounded to prevent Suzuki from escaping. But the guards caught him within 20 minutes. Strangely, Suzuki was running straight on the train tracks. He was put back in the same room, but this time with handcuffs. When a guard looked inside, he saw Suzuki sleeping with a blanket over his face. Angrily, he ordered Suzuki to remove the blanket, but when he didn't, the guards beat him severely. The next morning, the warden reviewed Suzuki's old records and noticed that every time Suzuki escaped, he was caught on the train tracks. At night, the warden and a guard were on rounds and found that Suzuki had somehow removed his handcuffs. Furious, the warden asked how he did it, but Suzuki remained silent. He was beaten severely again. One day, Suzuki was playing with a small wire he had somehow smuggled into the prison, hidden in his mouth. He used this wire to unlock his handcuffs. A few days later, the warden went on a week-long vacation. Suzuki saw this as a great opportunity to escape. He used his strength to unlock the door, but just as he was about to leave, a guard arrived for a random check. Seeing Suzuki with his face covered again, the guard left without saying anything. But in reality, Suzuki was not inside. He was sticking to the ceiling like a lizard, waiting for the right moment to escape. After the guard left, Suzuki slowly reached the top, punched through the roof, and escaped. When the guards realized he was gone, they sounded the alarm and notified the warden, who rushed back to the prison. The next morning, the police devised a plan to catch Suzuki, and the warden insisted on sending a team to the train tracks. The officers were skeptical, but followed his orders, and sure enough, they caught Suzuki on the tracks again. Suzuki seemed like a genius, outsmarting the guards every time, but the warden's cleverness led to Suzuki's capture. Pleased with his work, the warden was promoted and began inspecting prisons across the country. Meanwhile, Suzuki escaped again and was caught on the tracks once more. Every year, he was sent to a new prison with tighter security, but he always managed to escape, earning the media title of Star Fugitive and becoming famous nationwide. After 12 years, he was brought to Central Prison, where he was under strict security with 10 guards assigned to watch him. His cell was entirely made of cement with several locks on the door. This was the same isolation cell seen at the beginning of the story. After being put in the cell, Suzuki looked around, preparing to escape once again. A guard brought him food, but Suzuki captured the guard and handcuffed him before the guard could react. Other guards arrived and severely beat him. When Suzuki regained consciousness, he saw blood dripping from his face onto the iron bars. The next morning, the guard added more locks to his handcuffs to prevent him from escaping. Suzuki's days went by with him provoking the guards to beat him, causing blood to drip onto the bars. One day, a guard beat him so badly that one of his teeth fell out. Suzuki picked it up and smiled strangely, as if it was part of his plan. He started using his tooth to carve something on the wall. Weeks later, Suzuki attacked another guard and received the harshest punishment yet. He was chained up and left hanging. A year passed, and Suzuki was still serving his sentence, in terrible condition, with his body rotting and wounds infested with bugs. Finally, one evening, the guards unchained him, allowing him a moment of peace after a year. Meanwhile, former warden Mr. Kanamura visited the isolation cell and saw Suzuki's terrible condition but ignored it and left. That night, during a thunderstorm, Suzuki executed his plan. He used his sharpened tooth to unlock his handcuffs. Suzuki wasn't carving something on the wall. He was sharpening his tooth to use as a tool. After freeing himself, he pushed against the iron bars, weakened by his constant blood drips, and escaped. The story then reveals Suzuki's background. His mother died at his birth, and his father was in jail. He grew up with relatives, and one day saw his father from a distance in the forest. They had a brief conversation, during which Suzuki saw an upside-down Mount Fuji tattoo on his father's chest. Unfortunately, police arrived to arrest Suzuki's father, who ran straight to the train tracks, with young Suzuki vowing to find him one day. In the present, Suzuki was running on the tracks again when Warden Kanemura called out to him. Surprisingly, Suzuki stopped and was soon captured by the guards. Despite the highest security prison, Suzuki couldn't be contained, so Kanemura ordered him to be sent to the most dangerous prison on Earth, Present Isle. Located in the middle of the sea, it was surrounded by strong currents and no train tracks. The ocean was filled with sharks, making escape impossible. Inside, the prison was heavily guarded, with shoot-to-kill orders for any escaping prisoners. Suzuki was immediately locked in a cell made of rods around his body, preventing any movement. Kanemura went to the prison library to research Suzuki's history and found old files. Meanwhile, Suzuki dislocated his shoulders and squeezed out of the small space. Another prisoner saw him but was too intoxicated to speak. Kanemura, still researching, was interrupted by the prison alarm. Instead of panicking, the warden was happy, believing there was no escape from Present Isle and looking forward to the guards shooting a prisoner. Kanemura tried to explain Suzuki's uniqueness, but the warden ignored him. The next morning, armed guards spread across the island. Kanemura was briefing his men when Mission Commander Mishra arrived, explaining that Suzuki was searching for his father, who was also imprisoned on the island. Everyone was shocked, and Suzuki's plan was revealed. He purposely got caught to reach Present Isle and free his father. Finally, Suzuki found his father, and they cried upon reuniting. However, before the warden and guards arrived, they disappeared. Suzuki brought his father to the island's edge, where he had a paraglider prepared. They escaped together. The warden tried talking to an old prisoner, noticing a Mount Fuji tattoo on his chest. Realizing Suzuki had taken the wrong man, despite his efforts, Suzuki's luck had run out. Would you endure such hardships for your father? Let us know in the comments.